I think we are good to go. We have quite a number of people in attendance, so we don't want to waste more time, right? So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session. I'm Blessing Azeta, your host, and client relationship manager here at IT Horizons. So, I'm excited to have everyone here. So today we'll be tackling a subject that everyone is concerned about and is like sits in the heart of everyone in Nigeria about our economy, and that's cybersecurity. So we titled this session Ransomware, Phishing and Financial Fraud, the triple threat to Nigeria's economy. And to be honest, we're not exaggerating because they are threats to our economy. Okay, so from banks to startups to even our executives, no one is immune to these threats. And that's why over the next 1 hour, we'll be breaking down some of those threats that are currently targeting financial institutions and even industries all across Nigeria. And most importantly, we'll not just talk about the threats, but what we can do about them. So today I'll be inviting our speaker for today, Abdullah Aziz, our lead cybersecurity engineer here at IT Horizon. So Aziz will be sharing insights, real world scenarios, real incidents that have happened, and strategies that we can take back to our teams, take back to our organization to help curb this threat that is happening in Nigeria. So sorry, the session is recorded. We can ask our question after the presentation, so we don't cut in. We can ask our questions after the presentation. There will be a Q&A session later, so we can just jot them down or drop them in the chat bot. So once Aziz is done with his presentation, we'll just take the session. Thank you, everyone. Aziz, please, over to you.
Yeah, Blessing. Thanks for the introduction. Can you hear me clearly? Am I audible?
Yes, Aziz, we can hear you quite clear.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you for the introduction, Blessing, once again. So let me just, since I think she has introduced me to you, and my name is Aziz Abdullahi. I'm the lead cybersecurity engineer. Basically what I do in simple terms is this. I help organizations stay operational no matter what goes wrong, whether it's a cyber attack, whether it's a system failure, or a targeted fraud attempt. My job basically is to make sure the business doesn't stop. And today, that responsibility is becoming more critical than ever, because if you look at what's happening around us, right, especially here in Nigeria, one thing is very clear. We are not just digitizing financing anymore, right? What we are doing now is that we are rebuilding the entire financial system on a digital infrastructure, right? That are interconnected and at a massive scale. So over the last few years, the shift has been dramatic, right? We've been seeing mobile banking that has become the default, right? USSD has brought millions into the financial system. Fintech platforms are driving payments, lending money, and they are even onboarding. And instant transfer, right, have removed the idea, right? I've removed the idea of waiting from money movement. So everything now happens in seconds, in milliseconds. So that speed is so powerful. In fact, it has improved access, right? It has increased, efficiency, and also it has expanded financial inclusion across the country. But it has also introduced something else, something we don't always talk about enough, right? It has introduced exposure at scale, because when every financial interaction becomes digital and instantaneous, the environment changes completely. The same infrastructure that enables convenience is now also creating opportunity for who? For attackers. And this is where things start to get interesting. Nigeria's financial system today is no longer made up of isolated institutions, right? It is a connected ecosystem. If you see banks now, they now depend on fintech integrations. Fintechs themselves, they rely on APIs and third-party services. So payment processors, aggregators, and cloud platforms all play a role in keeping transaction flowing. So what we built is not just a system. We've built a network of dependencies. And in cybersecurity, every dependency is a potential point of failure. At the same time, we are seeing rapid financial inclusion. More ever are now using smartphones for financial services, right? They are opening digital accounts. You don't have to go to the bank to open an account, right? They are also moving money without ever stepping into a bank, right? So this is a progress, and it's a progress, and trust me, it's so very important and essential. But there is a gap that often comes with this kind of growth. Adoption is increasing faster than awareness. That's the problem. The way people are adopting all these technologies, the pace it is moving, is the awareness cannot meet up. And when that happens, security assumptions begins, to break. Not because the systems are weak, but because the ecosystem, becomes uneven. So now we are operating an environment where transactions are fast. In fact, in many seconds, you've done your transfer and it's gone. We are seeing users. There are many enormous users that are using, all these technologies. Platforms are deeply interconnected with each other, and security maturity varies across the board. So from a defensive standpoint, trust me, that is complex, because all of these technologies you have to protect, you have to put security in place. But from an attacker standpoint, it is ideal. That's what they want, right? And there's a well-known saying, right, in cybersecurity, that attackers don't break systems. They find the weakest path through them. And in a system like ours, there are many paths that attackers can leverage on, right? We have more users that create more, targets for phishing. More integrations create more technical entry points. More transactions, create more opportunities for fraud. And faster payments reduce the window for detection and response. So what we are seeing today is not random cyber activity. It is structured, it is deliberate, and increasingly, it is organized like a business. So across Africa and globally, financial institutions are now facing ransomware groups, that are targeting critical systems, right? Phishing campaigns designed to operate at scale. We are seeing fraud networks that function with coordination and specialization. And at the center of all of this, right, sits our financial ecosystem. So the conversation is shifting. It is no longer about whether systems are secure in isolation. The real challenge is whether security can keep up with the speed and scale of digital transformation. Because right now, there's a gap. And that gap is the problem, right?
Hi, Aziz. Sorry to disrupt you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, the slides, I don't know if you're moving it from your end. It's still the same, yeah, or you've not started moving it.
No, I've
So
not
I,
started moving it.
oh,
I've not
okay,
started
okay,
moving it. I've not started moving, please.
okay. All right, no problem.
Where I was, where I was. So listen. So, like I said, it is no longer about whether systems are secure in isolation, right? Because the real challenge is whether, like I said, security can keep up with the speed and scale of digital transformation, right? Um, like I said, attack surfaces are expanding faster than defenses, and transaction speed is increasing faster than detection capability. And cyber crimes, right? They are evolving faster than coordination between institutions. And this gap, like I said, is exactly where ransomware, phishing, and financial fraud operates, not as separate issues, but as connected threat ecosystem. So before we move into that, I want to leave you with a thought, right? In cybersecurity, failure is not always dramatic, right? Systems don't always collapse overnight. Sometimes what happens is much more subtle and more dangerous because confidence starts to erode. And in a fully digital financial system, trust, as we all know, is everything. Once that trust begins to weaken, even slightly, the impact goes far beyond technology, right? It affects adoption, it affects transactions, and ultimately it affects, the economy itself. So, here's how we approach this session, right? We start with what's happening right now in Nigeria's financial ecosystem, right? Then we look at real-world incidents, and more importantly, what we can learn from them. After that, we break down the three major threats in a way that is easy to understand. Then we connect everything into a single, attack chain. And finally, we talk about practical defenses, what actually works, right? And, sometimes I will try to pause at different points for maybe interaction. I may throw one or two questions, and please feel free to, engage. Now, let's get into why this conversation is important, right? Let's talk about the reality we are operating in today. Nigeria is not just growing digitally, right? It's accelerating at a very aggressive pace, right? So we've moved from traditional banking into mobile first banking, from physical branches to what we now see today, which is fully digital transactions. We've moved from isolated systems to highly connected ecosystems. So now on the surface, this is a progress. And trust me, it is a progress. But underneath, that progress is something else. It's complexity and it is exposure. That's the two, right? Every time a bank integrates with a fintech platform, every time an API is exposed for transactions, right? Every time a customer logs in from a mobile device, the attack surface expands. And here's the part most people, really underestimate. Attackers are not struggling to keep up. Attackers, they are not struggling to keep up. They are evolving at the same pace, sometimes even faster. So they study these systems, they understand how financial flows move, right? They identify weak points, not just in technology, but in processes and in people, right? Now, think about this for a moment. Financial institutions today are not just service providers. They are digital vaults connected to the internet 24/7. That's financial institutions for us today. So if that's the case, let me just quickly, ask a simple question. And I want us to answer. Maybe two or three people can just answer. Do attackers today, go after the weakest targets or the most valuable ones? Let me repeat the question. Do attackers go after the weakest targets or the most valuable ones? Please, you can just raise your hand if you want to reply, right? Say 30 seconds. So the question is, do attackers go after the weakest targets or the most valuable ones? Yeah, Temitope.
Yeah, I think attackers go after the most valuable targets because we have a lot of vulnerable organization, but in recent things, what we have seen happening is going after the most valuable guys. Thank you.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. In fact, I'm owing you something, right? Please, Blessing, help me collect his company details. I'm doing free cybersecurity health check for your company. I didn't tell Blessing. I'm just thank you for that. So exactly, that's what's going on. They go after value. And where's the value? In financial institutions, in payment platforms, in the systems that move money, which means the more we grow digitally, the more attractive we become as targets. And this is the reality today, right? And this is why understanding this threat is not optional. In fact, it's necessary. And we have to, understand how this really works. So these three threats are deeply connected. Phishing basically, is how attackers gain access. Ransomware is how they disrupt operations. Financial fraud is how they extract value. So if you understand how these three work together, you understand the majority of modern cyber attacks. And that's exactly what we are going to break down today. So before then, let's just quickly, walk through a realistic attack scenario, one that, reflects patterns we've seen across institutions, right? And mostly it starts very simply, right? An employee at a financial institutions might just receive an email. That emails, right? It looks legitimate. Maybe it's an IT support, maybe it's a system update and there's urgency. So the IT support or whatever, department it is, they click and they log in. At that moment, the attacker doesn't break in. At that moment, they don't break in. They are invited. You invite them in yourself. Now, the attacker has valid credentials. They have your username, they have your password. They log in quietly, no alarms, no noise. Because, they don't go through the stress of trying to break into your defenses. They are not trying to disarm your perimeter firewall or whatsoever. They are using your valid credentials, right, to log in. So, they just sit there, they begin to observe how systems are structured, who has access to what, where transactions happened. Then they escalate privileges as time goes on, slowly gaining more control. in that system. At this stage, the organization is already compromised, but nobody knows. Nobody knows. Now, the attackers, moves deeper. They don't stay in one place. They move across systems, from internal banking systems to connected platforms. Just think about something like, maybe Remita, for example, a platform that sits at the center of financial transaction. Now imagine an attacker reaching that level of access. At that point, they don't need to hack anything. In fact, they don't need to hack anything. They operate within the system. They can, initiate transactions. They can modify flows. They can access sensitive financial data. And here's the most, dangerous part. They don't act immediately. They just sit there. They wait. They study patterns. They strike when it's least noticeable. Right? That's how they move. Now, let me ask you, when do you think this attack is finally detected? Usually, after the damage is done. That is the reality of today. Most of the breaches are not detected when, they log in, when they are moving laterally in your system. Mostly they are detected after the damage is done. So what we just basically walk through is not just, a single type of attack. It is a combination of three major threats working together, right? Like I said, phishing opened the door. Financial fraud, enabled the attacker to profit. And in some cases, ransomware could be deployed to, cover tracks or increase pressure. This is why we call it the triple threat. Now, let's break each of them down, clearly so that, we understand what they really stand for. So, phishing. I want us to slow down here, right? Because phishing is where almost everything begins. Phishing is not, about breaking into systems. It's about getting someone to open the door for you. And attackers are very good at this. Okay, let me give you a simple, realistic scenario. Say you're at work, it's a busy day. You receive an email, right? It looks like it's from your IT department. The message says something like, we've detected unusual activity on your account. Please verify immediately to avoid suspension. And there's a link attached, right? It looks correct. The branding looks right. And there's urgency. And you don't want to lose. You don't want them to suspend your account. Now, in that moment, you are not thinking about cybersecurity. You are thinking about not losing access. So you click, you log in. And just like that, you didn't get hacked, right? You handed over your credentials yourself. Now, here's what happens next. And this is where it gets even more advanced. Modern phishing is not just about stealing your password, right? Attackers now use lookalike domains that are almost impossible to detect. Attackers now use AI-generated emails that sound natural and personalized. before AI, when we are doing phishing awareness, we categorize some stuff as red flag, like urgency, like error in in their sentence or something like that. But all of those things are green now because we now have AI helping them to do all of those stuff, right? And real-time phishing, right? Their page that captures your login, right, is done instantly. Immediately you log in, they have all of those credentials, right, at their own, backend. And even more dangerous, some attacks don't just take your password. That's not what they do. They capture your active session, which means even if you use multi-factor authentication, the attacker can still gain access without, triggering alerts. Now, think about this. The attacker doesn't need to break encryption. They don't need to exploit a vulnerability. They just need you to trust them. That's all. They need you to trust them, right? Now, let me just quickly ask you something, honestly. If you receive an email that looks 99% real, what will you rely on to detect it? Exactly. It becomes very difficult. Trust me. And that's why phishing remains the most effective attack vector today. Because while systems continue to improve, human behavior, our own behavior, remains predictable. As human, we respond to urgency, we trust authority, we act quickly under pressure and design their entire strategy around that. So when we talk about, cybersecurity, we are not just, protecting systems. We are managing human decisions under pressure. So if Aziz can make you click, Aziz doesn't need to hack. If I can make you click, trust me, I don't need to hack into your system. And that's the thing, that's the problem, right? So that's phishing for us. As for ransomware is what, attackers use when they want visibility and pressure. Once inside the system, they can deploy ransomware to maybe, shut down operations or to disrupt services or probably force immediate response. But modern ransomware goes further. So before encryptions, attackers steal sensitive data. So now they have leverage. Pay to restore systems, or you pay to prevent data exposure. These two is that you pay to restore systems, or you pay to prevent, data exposure. This combination is what we called double extortion, right? And at this stage, organizations are not just dealing with IT recovery. They are dealing with reputation. They are dealing with compliance issues. And, they are dealing with customer trust. You understand? Just imagine it's a normal business day, right? Inside like a solution, staff are working, transactions are processing, right? Customer are logging in. Everything looks perfect. Everything looks fine. But behind the scenes, attacker is already inside the network. They got in days ago, maybe weeks ago, through something as simple as what we just discussed, phishing email. And since then, they've been moving quietly. They've been accessing your servers. They've been identifying critical systems in your infrastructure, in your environment. They've been, locating sensitive data. No alarms, no disruption. Now, at a time of their choosing, everything changes. Suddenly, systems stop responding. Applications go down. Files becomes, inaccessible. Then you see a message appears. And the message says, your systems, have been encrypted. Pay to regain access. But that's not even the worst part. Before locking the system, the attacker already copied sensitive data. Like they've copied customer information, transaction records, internet documents. So now the organization is under pressure from two directions. Now, restore operations, prevent public data exposure. Those are the two things. If I may ask, if your systems go down for just 6 hours, in a financial institution, if your systems go down for just 6 hours, what happens? Now imagine 24 hours or 3 days. This is why ransomware is no longer just a technical issue, right? It's a full business crisis involving operations, involving compliance, and it involves operation and reputation. So that's ransomware. That's how it operates, right? So now let's look at financial fraud, which is often the end goal of any attacker. Unlike ransomware, this is usually quiet, right? Let's say something like an attacker gains access to a legitimate user account, maybe through phishing, which is like 80% these days. That's how they get into the system. Maybe through phishing, maybe through leaked credentials, right? Now, here's the key difference. They don't trigger alarms. They behave like like a normal user. They log in at expected times. They study transaction patterns. Then they act carefully. Maybe they start with small transactions. Maybe Amanda can just buy Corolla or Lexus, right? Amount that won't raise suspicion, right? Then gradually, they increase transaction size. Maybe something that can buy a house in Banana Island. They move funds across multiple accounts. They use trusted payment channels. Now, imagine this happening in a system connected to platforms like Meter. At that level, the attacker is no longer targeting one account. They are leveraging system trust to scale impact. And here's the most dangerous part. Detection is often delayed because on the surface, everything looks legitimate, everything looks fine. But underneath, it's the same. So if an attacker uses valid credentials, right? Say I am an attacker and I'm using valid credentials. How do you distinguish them from the real user? That's the challenge with financial fraud because it's not loud, it's not obvious, but it is extremely damaging. So, financial fraud, phishing, ransomware, these three, right? They are interconnected, right? And these threats are not separate. They are not, they are not three different problems to solve independently. They are steps in a single continuous process. Phishing gets the attacker in, like I said. Access allows, them to move. Then fraud or ransomware is how they, execute their objective. So when we treat them as isolated issues, we end up reacting to symptoms instead of addressing the root cause. Now, think about it this way. If an attacker cannot get in, that means they cannot move, right? If they cannot move, then they cannot reach critical systems. And if they cannot reach those systems, that means they cannot execute fraud or deploy ransomware. Which means one thing, and just one thing. Every successful attack that we've discussed thus far depends on one critical factor. All of them depends on one critical factor. And that factor is access. Not just having access, but having the wrong access at the wrong time, in the wrong hands. So the real question is no longer how do we stop ransomware? That's not the real question anymore. Or how do we prevent fraud? The real question now becomes, where do we break the chain most effectively? That's the question. And that's the question I'm asking you all. That's the question I'm asking you all. I would love someone, based on what we've discussed thus far. If I'm not someone, like 3-4 people, to just tell me, where do we break the chain most effectively? Please just raise your hand, then your mic will be unmuted. Where do we break the chain most effectively? Yeah, Mr. Shola.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you're audible. You can.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Abdullah, and I really appreciate this presentation. I know it's hitting the necessary points, when it comes to security. So I think from the initial point is the best way. Don't let them gain access into your system. Initial point, which is what uh, creating a sensitization for staffs, for people that that they are vulnerable. Let them know how the phishing looks like, how they can
Mm.
defend, what are the things that they can look after when they see one, and
Okay, Mr. Shola.
to have a practical of a.
Yeah, thank you. That's clear. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shola. I really appreciate it. Do you have any other, or we should just move on? Okay. Then we can move on. Mr. Shola, thank you once again. So the most perfect place to break the chain most effectively is what Mr. Shola said. At the entry point, at access. Because when you control access properly, you don't just reduce risk, you fundamentally disrupt the attacker's entire strategy. That's what you do. So now, let's tie everything together with defenses, and more importantly, we should, focus. Like I said, at the center of all of this is access control. Because if attackers cannot gain or misuse access, the entire attack chain breaks. So, what does strong access control look like in practice? First, multi-factor authentication. And not just for some users, I mean for all critical systems, right? Secondly, least privilege. People should only have access to what they absolutely need, nothing more, nothing less. Third, role-based access control is very, very important. Access should be structured and controlled. No, not just assigned arbitrarily to anyone, right? And for high-risk environments, right? Privilege access management, because admin accounts are the prime target. So now beyond access control, you need strong email security to reduce phishing risk, right? Continue testing, because it's not just a one-time thing, because threats evolve. And as they evolve, you have to, it's either a step ahead or you are at the same pace. In fact, you don't want to be at the same pace. And user awareness, because as we've seen, most attacks start with human interaction, right? So user awareness is very, very important. And like I tell people, there are three foundations in cybersecurity. It is people, it is technology, and it is processes. You don't want to miss out any of these three, right? So finally, from a compliance perspective, regulators like CBN are already, emphasizing cybersecurity as part of operational risk. So this is not just about protection; it's about meeting regulatory expectations, and also maintaining trust, right? So if you get access control right, you don't just reduce risk. Like I said, you significantly weaken the attacker's entire strategy altogether. So let's basically, pay more attention to how, we put access control in place. Now, before we wrap up and conclude, let me briefly talk about why this matters to you. At Odyssey Horizons, we focus on one core objective. And that core objective basically is helping organizations remain secure, resilient, and operational, regardless of the threat landscape. Because as we've discussed today, these attacks are not simple. They are coordinated, they are evolving, and often difficult to detect early. And the reality of this is no organization should be expected to handle all of this alone at all. Cybersecurity today is not just about tools, right? I've been in client environments that they have all the tools. Mention it, they will tell you they have it. They have all of those tools, right? So cybersecurity is not just about tools. It requires the right combination of technology, skilled expertise, proven processes, and that's where we come in. We work with organizations, especially in the financial sector, to strengthen access control, to identify vulnerability before attackers do, right? We also help companies to monitor threats continuously and also respond effectively when incidents occur, right? But more importantly, we don't just implement solutions. That's not what we do. We partner with you because your problem is our problem, right? So we want you to focus on what matters, bringing money in, doing your business, and just leave the technology part to us, because security is not a one-time activity. It's an ongoing process. So if there's one message I want you to take from this, right, is that while these threats are real and they are increasing every day, right, you don't have to navigate them alone. That's exactly why we are here for you, right? So let's bring everything together. Like I said, cyber attacks don't start big, right? They start small, almost invisible, right? A single click, a single credential. But from that point, they scale across systems, across platforms, across institutions, right? So phishing, ransomware, and financial fraud are not separate issues, right? They are parts of the same attack strategy. And if there's one control that consistently breaks this chain, like I said, it is access control. But beyond technology, awareness also matters, because at the end of the day, the strongest system can still be bypassed. So if the human element is exploited, the strongest system will be bypassed. So the real question is not whether attacks will happen, right? It's whether we are prepared when they do. Are we ready even when the attack happens? Because sometimes it's bound to happen, but do we have what it takes to come back? Thank you. And that will be all from me. Thank you. So we can have question and answer for the next 5-10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank
Listen.
you. Yeah, thank you so much, Abdullah. Like that was incredibly insightful. I'm sure everyone in this on this call now have a clearer picture of what we're really up against, those threats that are affecting us, and they have questions that they want to ask. I don't know if like the floor is open right now. This is our Q&A session based on what Abdullah said on ransomware, the phishing and financial fraud. Do we have questions? Yes, if we have questions, we can just signify and would unmute you so you can ask your questions. Or I don't know, Aziz did like a very perfect job and we understand everything we need to know. We're already armed with the right knowledge to take back to our teams and say, okay, this is what I learned today at the webinar. This is how we'll act moving forward. I'm sure people have questions.
If you don't, we can ask you.
Right? I think that's what we'll do at this point. If people like if people
Also,
think they're fine, then
also,
we can ask.
also Blessing,
Yeah.
I just want to pass the message out. I don't know if something I just say is an add-on, right, for every organizations that have interest. Like Mr. Sunday, like I said, help me collect his details. we'll be doing like free cybersecurity health check in the environment,
Right.
in this environment. So if anyone have interest in that kind of activity, right,
Yeah.
just yeah. So
Because I was even
health
saying it
checks.
that
Mhm.
you mentioned something around phishing, right? If we can even help the companies here run like a phishing simulation. So we'll see how many people are vulnerable for these attacks in your company and see how we can help you people with like strategies around it and even training for the staff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So okay, I think I have someone hands up. So maybe let me just unmute the mic. Okay. So your mic has been unmuted, so you can ask your questions.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Good morning. Thank you, presenter. And so I am not surprised for anybody not to ask question. Reason being that this is what we hear every day, and my team member are on the call, and my colleagues are on the call can testify that there is always a periodic training which we run in our organizations to sensitize and even enlighten people day-to-day trend and attacks and how to spot and even be sensitive around our environment we get. So this is more like a reiteration to a reiteration on what we've always discussed amongst ourselves. You get. So, and I would like to speak on two items you mentioned while you made mention of what's called phishing simulation. And I just want to ask, like, will it come with a cost? Like, how would that be paid out? And if we want to engage in for sensitization, because in enlightenment, it's also good to also partner with maybe a third party. So because by the time people are seeing maybe new faces or fresh perspective from new people, they get to it would make them take something more serious instead of receiving such messages. Foreign person. So those are the things that just want to say.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Michael. And luckily for you, um, I'm sort of like the account manager for financial institution, especially banks. So I'll definitely do a follow-up with you on how we can discuss how to run the simulation for your team and also do like an awareness for the team at Premium Trust Bank on how we can so, like you said, people need to see a fresh face. I know you guys might have been doing the in-house sensitization, but people might not take it as serious as when people come in to do it and want to do the simulation in a way that it's not even suspected by the staff. And we just want to see the weakest link because, like they say, we're only as strong as our weakest link. And if there is somebody in the organization basically that is still not going with this trend, then we need to spot that out and do like sort of sensitization. So I'll do a follow-up with you, would yes, on this and see how we can schedule that. And even for other people that are on this call, we have our respective account managers, right? Aside bank, if you're a bank, definitely it would be me. But if not, if you're maybe like other industries, you can reach out to your respective account managers that invited you into this session. We are ready. Little to no cost to do this because we want to create that awareness and spot the gaps in the system that we can help you put. If you're now maybe purchasing something external, we know that, okay, yes, you have to buy those things, but we want to help you first spot all of these gaps, then see how we can work around it together. Mr. Olusegun had his hand up. I don't know, Mr. Michael, did I answer your question?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Mr. Olusegun, if you're still on this call.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for the session. Although I don't really have any question per se, though most of the things he discussed is actually very true, and most of actually has taken it in the point. And so though we from our hand here, we usually have a time that we simulate this phishing across to everyone. So once people are able to identify, they just click on the option that it's a phishing mail. So we do that on a regular basis, just to get people to identify that yes, this mail is not is a suspicious mail and all that. Another thing he also mentioned was that I also think is also very he hits it on point is this access control, and it's very important. I'm just adding it because I don't have any question, because I think everything is off from my side is clear. It's just to ensure that infrastructure in terms of access to our critical infrastructure devices, servers are restricted to limited number of people who have access to it, and we should have multiple layers of how even the administrators can get access into the devices, not just one way or two ways. It should be, if possible, other ways, so that just to ensure that it is trusted, that yes, it is actually you that is accessing the device, because attackers are also looking for means of getting access into critical devices. From there, they can also penetrate deeply, because I have had several situations where attackers get into access into even as big as a voice router to make calls that runs into a lot of dollars, that, a lot of things. But so we just to ensure that our infrastructures are also critically managed in terms of control. So I think that is just for me. So if we, just as we have said, that probably it has no cost. If there are needs from our side, we'll reach out to you maybe for a demo to talk more about that, to see how we can add more into our environment. Thank you so much for time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Olusegun, for that insight. And like you said, and attacker has to just be right once, but you, as an employee, you have to be right all the time. They only need one thing to come into the infrastructure, but you, at all time, you have to defend it. Right? Yeah, thank you.
Um, there's a question on the chat board said, what is a leakware? Is a leakware the same as a ransomware?
So leakware is not the same thing as a ransomware. From the word ransom, right? Basically, they're encrypting your file and they're demanding ransom before they can release those files. Just like, okay, don't let me use kidnapping someone. I'm asking for ransom. That's ransomware, right? But leakware can just be a software, right, that can leak sensitive information out of your organizations. So they are not the same thing. Don't know if that's answered your questions, Mr. James.
Mr. James, okay, yes, yeah, said thank you. So I guess it answers question. So me, I have my own question, right? My own question to everybody right now on the call is, are you truly ready for a ransomware attack? Because I know, yes, everybody were trying to prevent it, okay, make sure it doesn't happen, but are we really ready for it? How ready are we? What backup strategy do we have in our organization? That's important. And that's why we're here, to walk through that session with you and make sure that everything is in check. So I don't know if any other person has any questions for Aziz or for IT Horizons. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody's hand up. I think we are good. Okay, Mr. Sunday. So I'll just enable your mic now so you can unmute to ask your question.
Okay, good afternoon. I just want to thank you. I came late for the presentation, so I didn't get the presentation. But I want to ask, is there a solution you have, like a mitigate phishing? And if it is, what's the name and how does it work? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sunday, for the question. So yes, we have a lot of technology, right, that speaks to all of these components. But we'll just follow up with you so that we can have that conversation outside of this call. So Blessing, please let's have a call with him after this call.
Yeah, definitely. Would schedule that, Mr. Sunday, so we can just look through what we have, the solutions we have, and walk through with your team on it. Thank you. Mr. Sunday, I don't know if that's okay by you for now.
Okay, that's fine by me. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm sure this session has been insightful. I know it's something we hear all the time, but it's just a reminder about, okay, what is really happening. It's already here. And like, as he said, these cyber criminals, as the world is evolving, they are also evolving.